Welcome to the Slide Show. Welcome to the Slide Show. Welcome to the Slide Show.
Movies, clicks, boobies, dicks, reviews, sips, theories, rips, big news, tips, doobies, shits. Welcome to the Snide Show.
Hello, and welcome, one and all, to the Snide Show. I'm your host, as always, Cornelius Edward Snyder, otherwise known as Corey the Curator, and tonight we're doing a deep dive into data. But first, squirt of ketchup with our segment, Slice of Life.
Loss of life, chaos, strife, taste and life, slice of life, slice of life. I wanna know what you've been up to. Slice of life, chaos, strife, taste and life,
Slice of Life. Had little cousin nephew Russell's birthday in the mix this past weekend. That's the eldest son of Adam, AC, on the network, which gave the week that classic family calendar finale. People, food, catching up, mild chaos, and then immediately returning to the content mines like nothing happened. I got to get in and get out early and give my gift, K-pop Demon Hunter Huntrix melange, a coloring book, a t-shirt, a toy. Haven't watched any of it yet. I know I've heard a lot of good things. I just think it's wild that in my generation, Scooby-Doo got censored for mentioning demons or occult influences, and now there are Demon Hunter toys. Not even secretly, not even implied, just right there in your Happy Meal. A Demon Hunter merch thing at McDonald's. What a world. But I'm all for it. Also had dinner with the Naramores. Lovely as always. Got to show off my gourmand skills. We had a whole Southwest Tex-Mex kind of thing. She made some tofu fajitas. We even had corn tortillas, good corn tortillas. I brought some Spanish rice and some refried beans that allegedly fuck, which I think is good. I'm choosing to receive that as culinary praise and not harassment. After dinner, I finally watched Sinners, which means I can now give the review instead of continuing to be culturally behind like a man discovering electricity through a Facebook post. If you have not watched Sinners yet and do not want anything spoiled, skip ahead a couple minutes. I have nothing bad to say at all. It had my favorite depiction of vampires since Anne Rice's newest joint. I love classic vampires, wooden stake, silver. I know that's more a werewolf thing, but it's a vampire thing too. Look it up. The blood transfer of memories, the daylight stuff, of course, garlic. I mean, they really went for it. It was the classical vampire. I loved it. But then they threw other cultures in there too, but not in a way that betrayed anything. Oh man. I just know one thing. My vampires do not sparkle. In the colors, the writing, of course, the acting, everything was just incredible, wonderful cinema. And on the note of cinema, I hope things continue in this direction of original properties. Speaking as a recovered Disney adult, we need more original studio films, more serious genre swings, and more of these newer indie phenoms breaking through. Backrooms and Obsession, I know, are a couple that are now on my list. Tomorrow is Andy's vet appointment. That's my puppy dog, my old puppy dog. It's the kind of errand that turns into a whole day soft hostage situation. It's a big drive up there, the waiting, the checking, the paying, the worrying. I always like to get a hike in there with her when we do that kind of thing. And then pretending the rest of the schedule still exists after that. It's insane. So that's the slice of life. Family birthday, dinner with friends, sinners, beans that allegedly fuck, demon hunter toys for children. And now back to the regional news machine, studying Christiansburg as it's studying emergency services and building houses and courting infrastructure pressures. And somehow Parisburg has a fake bank sting scam in there. But first, a word from our sponsors. This episode is brought to you in part by Savvy Sisterly Sales. Discover handmade gifts, art, and decor crafted with love by Savvy Sisterly Sales. From thoughtful keepsakes to charming handmade pieces, Savvy Sisterly Sales offers unique creations made to brighten homes, celebrate special moments, and support meaningful local shopping. Scan the QR code to browse their latest items, follow along on this journey, and find something special for you and yours along the way. First up, we've got Christiansburg Fire and EMS Study. Town Council has a local government double feature on the calendar. A 5 p.m. quorum meeting with consultants to discuss a recent fire and EMS study, followed by the regular 7 p.m. Town Council meeting the same evening. This is one of those local stories that sounds boring until someone needs an ambulance, at which point it becomes the only story in the world. Emergency services are one of those civic systems people usually do not think about until the exact second they need them, at which point response time, staffing, coverage, equipment, and budget stop being boring buzzwords and become the difference between public service and public panic. The paperwork of life or death. The broader angle is growth pressure. Christiansburg, like a lot of towns in the New River Valley and abroad, has to plan for development, population shifts, traffic, aging infrastructure, and the very unglamorous math of how many trained people and vehicles it takes to keep a town safe. The actual 370-plus page emission CIT fire and EMS study is not publicly posted yet, but the public summary says Montgomery County should prepare for public and volunteer decline by adding 3 new stations, hiring a fire marshal, improving recruitment and retention, and creating a clearer county-wide funding model. Christiansburg Council was briefed June 23rd, and town staff said a public link would be added. The question is what the study recommends: more staffing, different station coverage, budget increases, equipment upgrades, response time changes, regional coordination, or some other version of the town is growing and the emergency system just has to grow with it. It just does. And the more useful question: whether council treats this like an actual planning document or like municipal wallpaper. Because we got 100 houses coming, honey. Did I tell you about the 100 houses? I think I told you about the 100 houses back in February. Christiansburg is getting more houses. Town Council approved a rezoning request connected to nearly 100 new houses on Kimball Lane back in February. I think I'm seeing them being built. More homes means more people, more traffic, more emergencies, and more yummy data. This is the current Virginian data center discourse. Virginia has landed on a temporary compromise in the data center fight. The new state budget keeps the tax exemptions in place for now, but adds an energy consumption tax on data centers. Virginia's General Assembly passed a roughly $75 billion biennial budget that keeps data center tax exemptions in place for now, but adds a new energy consumption tax on data centers. The budget now goes to Governor Abigail Spanberger, watching you girl, who has the line item veto authority. Axios reported that the temporary data center energy tax is expected to generate up to $600 million annually, while the broader tax exemption fight has been pushed into next year. $600 million annually, $75 billion. Okay. That matters locally because the data center debate is moving beyond Northern Virginia. In Botetourt County, Google plans a $3 billion data center investment expected to create at least 150 jobs by 2030. Kinda nothing. Supporters point to jobs and tax revenue. Critics point to energy demand, water concerns, and whether massive server farms are really that rural economic miracle that they've been sold to us as. I never bought it. I mean, there's so many other concerns. Noise pollution, other forms of pollution. So the state's position appears to be keep the incentives, tax the electricity, and postpone the bigger fight until everybody has had enough time to become either richer or angrier about it. Virginia looked at data centers and said, we hate the power usage and the pollution, love the tax revenue and maybe some upsides, but would like to experience all the feelings at once until the next budget crisis, please. As we take over the environment of the wilds, taking up the forests and fields with houses and data centers, we will increasingly encounter their creatures. The Southwest Virginia Wildlife Center in Roanoke is caring for 2 orphan bobcat kittens after the mother was hit and killed by a vehicle in Russell County. The kittens have already grown to 640 and 685 grams and are being fed formula until transitioning to solid food. Staff say bobcats are especially difficult to rehabilitate because the goal is to raise them without making them comfortable around humans, like me. The center is also in its busiest stretch of the year with more than 300 animals in care, including foxes, squirrels, opossums, reptiles, large snakes, and these 2 tiny regional murder mittens in training. The bobcats are being carefully raised not to trust humans, which makes them both wild animals and, frankly, pretty solid judges of character from the start. And the data centers don't only serve us and compete with the wildlife, we are now competing with each of them, creating a strange, constant life cycle. We are competing now with the data centers for the access to the data. See, more than 30,000 customers are still waiting for broadband connections as River Street Networks struggles to complete expansion work in parts of Virginia. Cardinal News reports that while the federal deadline is the end of 2026, contracts with Virginia's Department of Housing and Community Development called for some work to be done earlier. State letters cited financial concerns that affected the project's ability to move forward as contracted. So in 2026, the region is still having the same conversation. Broadband is essential, rural communities need it, public money is involved, and somehow the internet is still arriving like it's being delivered by mule. I'm sorry, that was a typo. Musk. moving away from data centers, we got a little more crap. Crime. Let me wet my whistle. Crime. While Virginia is trying to figure out how to regulate billion-dollar data centers, Harrisburg police are warning residents about a new scam on the streets that somehow combines online utility payments, fake bank fraud alerts, fake law enforcement website pages, pop-ups, phone jacking, and a pretend sting operation. Harrisburg police are warning residents about a scam that sounds like it was written by someone who learned banking, hacking, and law enforcement from 3 different YouTube thumbnails. According to police, a victim was trying to pay a utility bill online when a message claimed a computer had been hacked and locked. Then a caller posing as someone connected to the bank said unauthorized funds had been withdrawn, recovered, and returned. From there, the scammer, and we see this picture of him. Let's get a little closer here. I'd rather not, and I know the filter's weird, but honestly, it makes it a little easier to see somehow. I mean, it's super low res. It's like really low res in the filter that I see. That makes this look all cool and like a hologram. Actually smoothing that out a little bit, but you can't discern any features. You can't see his eyes at all. From there, the scammer claimed police and bank officials were running a sting operation and needed the victim to withdraw cash and hand it to someone as evidence. So this guy posing as a plainclothes cop with that phone there that hacked into this person trying to pay a utility bill was like somehow like, I mean, maybe he looks like that because it's like he didn't even expect to get that far into it. He's like, holy shit, this is working. Fuck, I didn't bring the cop uniform. So from there, the scammer claimed to be the police, and just hand it to them as evidence. That's insane. So, so the Paris police have to tell you, they have to tell you, folks, that is not how banks work. That is not how law enforcement works, and not how evidence works. That's their statement. If the police need someone's checking account to complete a sting operation, that is not a sting operation. That is community theater with felony paperwork, I say. But speaking of dumb criminals, however, back to wildlife, let me tell you about some stolen eastern screech owls. So in Southwest Virginia, 3 eastern screech owls have become wildlife ambassadors after officials say they were illegally taken from a nest as eggs and hatched in an incubator. Because the owls were raised around humans, they became too habituated to be released safely back into the wild. Like I said, that's what those people with the bobcats were afraid of. So now, instead of living as wild owls, they're being used by the Southwest Virginia Wildlife Center to teach kids why wild animals should stay wild. It is a strange little morality play. Somebody tried to DIY an owl family, and now the owls have a full-time job in education. Try to take that job, AI. Be a stolen screech owl and teach children about wildlife. Bet you can't. Let's move on to InfoScat.
Welcome to InfoScat.
Oh, you're back. So you ready to hear? Ready to hear about this? You ready for the big enchilada? Joe, I don't know if you're ready for this, Joe. Joe. They took it from me. Tim Heidecker and them took it from me. That's enough of that. This is InfoScat, where we dig through the shit to find the kernels of truth. From MK Ultra to the Red Scare, from CIA flirtations with the press to UFO discourse, from church doctrine to corporate branding, from wartime leaflets to Facebook unk memes posted by a man whose profile picture is either him with a bass fish or an eagle crying on the Constitution, a real bad selfie from below. The machinery is old. It's as old as human history, as old as language. Obscure the truth, report lies, confuse the public, fracture trust, and then, once everyone is dizzy enough, sell them something. A flag, a product, a savior, a villain, a religion, a subscription. That's the heart of it. It's not merely lying. Lying's part of it. Lying on its own, though, is almost charmingly primitive. A lie is a tool. It's a caveman's tool. A sharpened rock, a sharpened tongue. But disinformation is architecture. It is lying with infrastructure, payroll, plausible deniability. A conference room where some pale little ghoul says, "Oh, what if we don't deny the scandal exactly, but instead attach it to something so stupid that no normal person wants to be seen discussing it?" That right there is the poison. Concentrate. A truth can be buried by censorship, but it can also be buried by overexposure, overstimulation, numbness. You do not have to hide the signal if you can drown it in clown horns. This is the truth sandwich, poison pill disinformation. A verifiable truth is fused with a falsehood, an exaggeration, an absurd claim, until the real issue becomes socially radioactive. The goal is not always to convince people of a lie. I mean, that's kind of silly. Sometimes the goal is to destroy coherence itself, to make signal and noise indistinguishable so that people just go about their day. So let's Merriam-Webster this bullshit. Information is data offered as accurately as possible. Not perfectly, because humans are involved, and humans are damp meat calculators with childhood wounds. Memory is malleable. History is written by victors. But at least there is an attempt to describe reality. Facts are the pieces of objective reality. That which is scientifically and empirically proven. Double, triple verified. Misinformation is false information spread without deliberate intent. Grandma shares a fake photo of a sick or starving child because she thinks she is helping. She is not helping. She is doing unpaid theater. Disinformation is falsehood or distorted information spread intentionally. It is not accidental. It has a target, a motive, an agenda, and usually a beneficiary hiding somewhere behind the curtain. They wear the face of public concern. This is a person that makes a fake photo of a sick or starving child. Psychological operations, or Psy-Ops, are influence campaigns designed to alter perception, morale, belief, identity, or behavior. In military terms, they are aimed at target audiences. In political terms, they are called messaging. In corporate terms, they are called branding. In family systems, they are traditions. They are, your mother is just worried about you. In cults, they are called doctrine. In toxic relationships, they are called I never said that. Gaslighting. Same beast, different fur. Influence frameworks describe Psy-Ops methodology through concepts like target audience analysis, media selection, message development, dissemination, feedback, and adjustment. That is important because it reminds us this stuff is not magic. It's a workflow. This was made in a lab. This is paperwork. Acting, psychology, sociology, marketing, trauma, therapy, rehabilitation, public representation, organization, all tools in the bag of psychological operations. You've got the old tradition, empire, church, espionage. This did not begin with academia or the internet. The internet just gave the village idiot a satellite dish and a monetization dashboard. Empires have always understood that war is not merely physical, it is perceptual. Before soldiers move, stories move. The enemy is barbaric, the king is chosen, the gods approve, the sacrifice is necessary, the suffering is temporary, the taxes are patriotic, the dead are honored. Which is a lovely thing to say immediately before producing more dead. Ancient strategic traditions understood deception as part of war. Mislead the enemy, conceal weakness, exaggerate strength, divide alliances, break morale before the battle. The battlefield is not just land, it is confidence. Then religious institutions refined the internal version. Not all faith, not all religion, not every believer, but institutions with power discovered the obvious. If people believe obedience is sacred and doubt is corruption, you do not need guards on every road. You install the guard in the skull. That is cheaper, very efficient, darkly brilliant, horrifying in the way a well-designed mousetrap is horrifying. A mousetrap of the mind. Then espionage professionalized it. States learned to move through proxies, cutouts, rumor networks, journalists, academics, activists, front groups, defectors, double agents, forged documents, selective leaks, and sources familiar with the matter, which is journalism's version of a man in a trench coat coughing into a payphone. And through all of this, they discovered psychology. The psychological turn made it modern. Sigmund Freud explored the unconscious, repression, desire, fear, projection, and the irrational machinery under the polished marble lobby of the self. Then Edward Bernays, Freud's nephew, took the family ghost and sold it to capitalism. Bernays helped build modern public relations by applying psychological insight to mass persuasion. Do not just sell people a product, sell them an identity, an emotional release, a fantasy of autonomy, status, sex, rebellion, safety, belonging. They all fucking sell. Blood sells. If it bleeds, it leads. Advertising learned that people do not only buy soap, they buy purity. They do not only buy cars, they buy escape. They do not only buy cigarettes, they buy death with better lighting. And they have favorite colors of all of these things. This is where propaganda and marketing begin sharing a cigarette in the alley behind civilization. The state says, support the war. Corporations say, support the brand. Campaigns say, support the candidate. The influencer says, support my journey. The cult says, support the leader. The algorithm says, remain engaged while your frontal lobe becomes soup. Different owners, same animal. Now, all of this comes together with MK Ultra and psychic driving before going back out later with Mockingbird. MK Ultra sits in the American imagination because it sounds like conspiracy fiction written by a paranoid raccoon, except the broad program was real. The CIA backed research into mind control drugs, interrogation, coercion, and behavioral manipulation. The mythology around it often outruns the documentation. But the documented core is bad enough. You do not need to add dragons to a house fire. One of the ugliest associated ideas is psychic driving, linked to psychiatrist Ewan Cameron, involving repeated messaging, sensory manipulation, drugging, and attempts to break and recondition the mind. It is the dream of total control reduced to a clinical nightmare. Destroy the person's internal structure, then install new furniture. We see bits and pieces of all of this stuff, but a large amount of the documentation of MK Ultra was burned, but people have been able to fill back in the gaps by tracing back a lot of this stuff. So all of that, what I just mentioned, is the individual level logic of the Psy-Op in its most intimate and abusive form. Destabilize perception, isolate the target, overload the nervous system, repeat the desired frame, punish resistance, reward compliance, then make the target doubt their own memory. Now, the way that Cameron did it, as well as other scientists in on this, they did it hardcore. They would take a person, usually a mental patient or a prisoner, and they would just sensory deprive them until they forgot who they were, and then they would rehabilitate them. But a lot of stuff with MK Ultra, they would take things to their extreme, but along the way, the people involved derived a lot of data. And that data has gone on to influence a lot of aspects of our culture. Again, like acting, even Las Vegas, with casinos and like the way they're designed and sensory overload and stuff. Marketing, again, all of this data intersects in intel. I mean, that's what intelligence is all about, right? Is data. That is the catching you up to kind of the overview of this, and then again, though, the thing is breaking the mind before rebuilding it. Overstimulation, deprivation, and then rebuilding. This is the overlap with trauma. A person in a traumatized, exhausted, isolated, financially desperate, socially rejected, or emotionally paralyzed state is more vulnerable to manipulation. Not because they are stupid, because their threat system is already activated constantly. They are scanning for safety, belonging, certainty, relief. A manipulator, a cult, a predator, a political movement, or a brand can step into that wound and say, there. Pain has a name. That enemy caused it. I can fix it. Follow me. That is grooming logic. It does not always begin with commands. It begins with relief. And you could say that poor person, a homeless person is in this state easily, sure. But the middle class, as it has been chipped away, most people are constantly in that state. They're constantly in debt, no matter how nice the car, how nice the house. Millionaires, you hear too, oh, I don't even have any liquid cash, blah, blah, blah. They've got stock, they've got credit, they've got assets, but they'll say, I'm cash poor. I'm a millionaire, but I'm cash poor. Our system has become designed because of inflation to keep everybody in this traumatized fight or flight state. See? Everybody's in this grooming trap. So the individual Psy-Op. First, destabilize. The target becomes unsure of what is true, who to trust, or whether their own perceptions are reliable. Then isolation. Trusted outside voices are discredited. Friends are enemies. Family does not understand. Experts are corrupt. Everyone is lying except the person or the system doing the manipulation. Can't trust corporations. Can't trust the government because naturally the arsonist has appointed himself fire marshal. Then reframing. The manipulator supplies a story that explains the chaos. This story may contain real grievances, which makes it stronger. A good manipulation rarely uses pure fiction. Pure fiction has no roots. The stronger move is contaminated truth, real pain, real corruption, real hypocrisy, real institutional failure, fused to a false conclusion. Government bad. It's not a monolith. Then repetition. The same frame is delivered again and again and again through different emotional costumes. Fear, pride, shame, humor, belonging, urgency. Then dependency. The target begins returning to the source for interpretation. Not information, interpretation. Tell me what this means. That is the handoff. That is when the person's internal compass gets outsourced. Outsourced to the church, to the company, the job, the cause, XYZ. It's usually going to be Nike. Then enforcement. Doubt becomes betrayal. Questions become evidence of corruption. Leaving becomes impossible without an identity collapse. That is the micro scale. Domestic abuse can use it, cults can use it, political extremists can use it, scammers can use it, corporations can use diet versions of it with brand loyalty and lifestyle identity. Your phone does it politely with rounded corners. But what's more important is the massive scale. And I think that's a lot of what wound up burnt. On the mass level, it works similarly, but the target is not one person. The target is a population, a movement, a market, a class, a nation, a fandom, a demographic, a block of voters, or a platform-defined audience segment, which is a phrase that should make every free person feel like packaged ham. I mean, it's shit I've had to learn in this industry that I have a hard time with because, yeah, it feels so gross. The mass version does not require everyone to believe the same lie. That is old propaganda. Crude propaganda wants conformity. That's not it. They realize there's too big of a population for that. Modern disinformation often wants fragmentation, isolation again. It wants 20 groups believing 20 incompatible stories, all too angry and exhausted to build a shared reality. This is called noise flooding. True documents, fake documents, real whistleblowers, and performative grifters all dumped into the same swamp until the public stops trying to distinguish them. The goal is paralysis, not persuasion. That is the modern trick, not believe this, more like nothing can be known. Everyone lies, all institutions are fake, all critics are agents, all evidence is planted, all expertise are elitists. All nuance is cowardice. Pick a tribe and start swinging. #enlightened centrism. Once that happens, power does not need to win the argument. It only needs to survive the fog. And here's the chapter in history after or concurrently with MK Ultra. The other one to look into is Mockingbird, Operation Mockingbird. And there are lots of other like sub projects and stuff, but this is again more bringing this to the mass scale. This is where the CIA and media conversation enters, usually under the nickname Operation Mockingbird. The broad historical record supports that intelligence agencies cultivated relationships with journalists, media figures, publishers, and cultural institutions during the Cold War. The exact size, structure, and popular mythology of Mockingbird can get inflated, but inflation is exactly how real abuses get turned into cartoon villain wallpaper. But to me, the conservative claim is already enough. Intelligence agencies understood media as terrain. They understood that newspapers, magazines, radio, film, academia, and later television could shape public perception domestically and globally. In a Cold War frame, culture was not a decoration. Culture was weaponry with better tailoring. That is the part people miss. Propaganda is not only posters of soldiers pointing into the middle distance. It is what stories get funded, which scandals get buried, which dissidents get described as unstable, which foreign leaders become monsters, which allies remain complicated, which atrocities get passive voices. Mistakes were made. By whom? Apparently by weather patterns. Now, the UFO discourse may be one of the cleanest examples of contaminated truth. There are serious, narrow questions. Unidentified aerospace events, pilot reports, sensor anomalies, airspace security, experimental aircraft, foreign surveillance, classified platforms, contractor secrecy, military embarrassment, and defense blind spots. Then come the glitter cannons, alien gods, time travelers, underground lizard ambassadors, Atlantis, interdimensional prom kings, messages from the palace from Pleiades, and one guy named Randy who claims the moon is a soul trap but also sells magnesium drops. In ufology, verified or plausible military encounters can be mixed with extreme claims until the entire subject becomes stigmatized. The absurd material absorbs attention, allowing narrower questions about technology, airspace, sensors, and defense secrecy to be avoided. Now, you see, my thing is, and I've been getting into this research since I was like 10 years old or something, since I was able to like read those little books about aliens and shit, like I never stopped. And the thing is, I've been down to the bottom of the rabbit hole and back, and this is what I've landed on. You can take this to the bank. You can take this to whatever your betting app of choice is. I don't know when the real disclosure is going to happen, but here it is. UAP, unidentified aerial phenomenon, are illegal nuclear vehicles. Okay? That's it. That's most of what they've ever been. From the Nazi Bell to Roswell to Rendlesham to the silver ones you see now. And the thing has always been they're very dangerous. They're very illegal. They're illegal not only in the sense of their funding is illegal through the black budgets and allocated budgets, but they're illegal in the sense like they're really dangerous. And you see now a lot of states relaxing laws around portable nuclear batteries. This is part of that. And this is what the disinformation campaigns have always been about, and why the scientists around them, they don't even really know what they're working on. I mean, they're so compartmentalized, and this is something you'll hear Bob Lazar talk about, who's very famous in this. He's a famous whistleblower on this whole thing. I think at one point he was spreading misinformation. At some point it turned into disinformation. Same thing with Mary Eskridge. Same thing with a lot of these scientists, these whistleblowers. Because there's what happens in OPSEC, operational security, and disinformation campaigns, and where they intersect is that when you go to work for some sort of highly classified operation or organization, one of the loyalty tests, it's kind of hazing, but it's also just kind of interviewing for the job, is that they will in some way position disinformation in your vicinity and see if that disinformation is carried out of the room, either physically or mentally, socially. They want to see if you're going to spread that shit and how you do. And if you do, they're going to weigh how important that you are and probably keep fucking with you. Because it's fun, and because they can't just cut you loose, because now you've gone from asset to liability. And when you are a liability to national security, and that's what all of this is, that's bad. You want to be an asset. Everybody wants to be an asset. And on that note, I love this nation. I want to see this nation succeed. I want everyone to know the truth about everything, though, especially crime. And yeah, so when you hear about like aliens and stuff like that, it's either something that's been planted intentionally or unintentionally through one of these campaigns. Okay. And again, what they'll do with these liabilities is, and you can see, look into Richard Doty and what he did to this guy, where he drove this guy crazy and he wound up, he's not with us anymore. It's crazy. Lots of stuff like that. Lots of MK Ultra stuff like that. Lots of UFO stuff like that. And again, it's because I think all of this is overlapping in that OPSEC way. And it gets so complicated these days, because even with the internet, everything's on the table now, but now it's easier to do that divide and conquer thing. Which brings us to memes, troll farms, and corporate Psy-Ops. Because ever since this age of chaos has arrived, suddenly propaganda has become fun-sized. A meme is not just a joke image. It is a social transmission unit. The word predates the internet. It is a viral idea. That is all it is. It compresses an attitude into a repeatable symbol. It bypasses the long hallway of argument and kicks open the emotional door with whatever information in hand. That is why memes are powerful. Portable ideology. Jokes that carry assumptions. They can satirize power, puncture hypocrisy, and build community. They can also dehumanize, radicalize, launder lies, and train reflexes. A troll farm does not need to persuade you like a professor. It needs to irritate you like a mosquito in a dark room. It injects doubt, provokes overreaction, amplifies division, impersonates consensus, and makes the public square feel diseased. Then normal people leave, extremists stay, and the platform reports engagement is up. Corporations do a cleaner version. They do not say we are manipulating the symbolic architecture of your identity in order to extract loyalty and margin, unless you're BlackRock. They say, join the community. Every brand wants community now. Shoes want community. Soda wants community. Banks want community. The chicken sandwich wants to be a moral philosophy with pickles. The same techniques repeat. Target the audience, define the vulnerability, craft the emotional message, select the channel, measured response, adjust. We map this same basic campaign logic through target, audience analysis, media selection, content development, dissemination, feedback, and assessment. And it all disgusts me, and I'm very hard at it, and I need people on my team that are better at it. AI. Narrative control at machine speed, light speed, artificial information. And now we have AI, which does not need to be a metal skull with red eyes, because reality, as usual, found the cheaper and more depressing version. AI can generate text, images, audio, video, comments, fake personas, synthetic consensus, plausible articles, counterfeit screenshots, personalized persuasion, automated replies, and endless variations of the same ideological infection. The old propaganda office needed new staff. The new one needs a prompt, a data set, a botnet, and a man named Bryce, who says growth hacking without being legally struck by lightning and heats up his fucking shrimp in the goddamn office microwave and everyone has to smell it. God damn it, Bryce. The danger is not simply that AI can lie and lie so quickly. Humans already lie magnificently. We are basically fermented apes with alibis. We lie with artisanal commitment. We are boutique manufacturers of bullshit, handcrafted, locally sourced, a farmer's market of deception, absurdity, abundant. The danger is scale, speed, personalization, and deniability. The stranger problem is that AI can participate in the management of what can be comfortably researched, summarized, repeated, or socially framed. Not always because someone in a bunker pressed the big red hide the truth button, although the human mind does love the bunker, does love a big red button, preferably with a map wall and a sweating colonel who doesn't know whether or not to make that decision. More often, it is duller than that. Liability, moderation policy, source uncertainty, reputation risk, institutional caution, platform incentives, legal gray zones, safety filters, search ranking rot, a deep bureaucratic terror of saying one legally spicy noun too confidently. And then you have paid responses. So a researcher runs into a wall, not a clean wall. Clean walls are honest. This is a fog wall. Research block phenomenon is the engine underneath it. A major public interest subject becomes almost impossible to discuss cleanly because real evidence, legal caution, institutional self-protection, rumor, partisan bait, conspiracy inflation, and platform safety systems all collapse into the same poisoned soup. You could be researching pollution or exploitation, and the engine is going to trust the polluter or the exploiter's official statements as fact rather than a third-party, unbiased investigator, in the name of being unbiased. Or if it's a corporation now, it's a national security concern. This is a system where sensitive public record material can trigger content filters, false positives, sanitized phrasing, inconsistent refusals, or a kind of research halt that leaves the user with less certainty and less clarity than when they started. You may not know this, it says. This topic is complex, it says. Claims remain disputed, it says. There are allegations, it says. It says this even when some parts are not allegations, but documented facts trapped in the same contaminated swamp as speculation, partisan bait, and lunatic garnish. That is the modern InfoScat. Not merely hiding truth, but surrounding it with enough sewage that decent people stop digging. The trick is contaminated truth. Mix verifiable facts with false, exaggerated, or absurd claims until the entire subject becomes socially radioactive. And then they go back to work. The future Psy-Op does not need to delete reality. It only needs to make reality boring, risky, embarrassing, legally complicated, algorithmically suppressed, and emotionally exhausting. Which, frankly, is how most institutions prefer their truth served. Lukewarm, redacted, and with a garnish of plausible deniability. With this tool, a state actor, political machine, corporation, cult, scam network, or private influence vendor can test messages against audiences, adapt tone by demographic, flood comment sections, fabricate grassroots momentum, impersonate public outrage, and bury reality under synthetic noise. With just a few clicks. One message for veterans, another for lonely teenagers, another for suburban moms, another for disaffected men, another for activists, another for investors, another for a journalist. Each one tuned to a wound, all giving them the same impression. All meant to give them the same attitude. That is this click button nightmare that we're in. Not mind control in the cartoon sense, but environmental control. Something more like from They Live, as dumb as a movie as that is. Control the feed, control the repetition, control the apparent consensus, control which facts are paired with which emotions, control what looks popular, what looks dangerous, what looks cringe, what looks patriotic, what looks forbidden, what looks inevitable. People think censorship is the only threat to truth. It is not. Sometimes the threat is abundance. 1,000 claims, 1,000 counterclaims, 1,000 bots, 1,000 experts, 1,000 former insiders, 1,000 screenshots, 1,000 debunks 1,000 podcasts, 1,000 men in sunglasses explaining that the real truth is available, and part 2 behind a paywall. The public does not become convinced. The public becomes tired. The tired people are easier to control. The tired people are easier to rule. Now, I get it. That was a lot. But here's the interesting part. Because they couldn't sell this to Hollywood, it became a national defense grift, which makes it easier to become a Disinfo thing. It went from managing the story to becoming the reason the story is allowed to continue to happen. Once a chatbot, data center, model, server farm, gas turbine, or corporate software stack gets labeled a national security asset, normal citizen law starts looking optional. Environmental review becomes delay. Local zoning becomes obstruction. Public health becomes unfortunate friction. Community oversight becomes a threat to readiness. That is the grift. It's happening now. Not that the technology is useless. That would be comforting, actually. A useless machine is just expensive furniture with delusions. The darker possibility is that the machine is useful enough to be dangerous, flawed enough to be irresponsible, and profitable enough that nobody in power wants to slow it down. A probabilistic system, trained to guess the next most likely token, gets marched into the National Defense Temple and dressed up like Athena with a defense contract. It hallucinates, misreads context, smooths over contradictions, and still somehow becomes mission critical, because mission critical does not always mean best. Sometimes it means available, obedient, integrated, and already paid for. That is the real national security loophole. Call the thing essential, then make accountability look unpatriotic. The military says speed. The critics say accuracy. The contractor says invoice. The community says, why does the air smell like a robot burning a tire fire? And the government, with the dead-eyed serenity of a man explaining why the orphanage must be bulldozed for freedom, says, national defense. This is how empire launders infrastructure through fear. Build the server farms, burn the energy, bypass the permits, classify the details, privatize the profits, socialize the pollution, then tell the citizens this is all for their protection, even as their laws, lungs, and local authority are quietly fed into the turbine. This future is not wearing a chrome skeleton. It's a big, ugly box with a military exemption, a billionaire vendor, a chatbot that cannot reliably explain lunch, and a federal lawyer arguing that shutting off the smoke machine would endanger America. And this box is calling the shots. The key factual premise is that AI infrastructure is being pooled under the language of national defense. The Department of Defense, or War, has integrated Grok, or a government-facing version of Grok, into classified military systems, including GenAI.mil and Maven-related decision support environments, because apparently the natural endpoint of the chatbot era was giving the autocomplete goblin a badge, a bunker, and a defense appropriation, and saying, fire at, and then finish the sentence. The stated purpose is intelligence processing, operational synthesis, logistic support, and faster command decision making. This becomes the basis for treating the model and its supporting infrastructure as a national security asset. The military argument is based on speed. Modern warfare produces more sensor data, surveillance footage, intercepted communications, satellite materials, cyber logs, and battlefield signals than human analysts can process manually. In that context, the AI is not presented as an autonomous commander, but as a high-speed sorting, summarizing, and retrieval layer. Not General Terminator, more like a caffeinated filing cabinet with classified clearance and a mild hallucination disorder. It can search across massive data sets, flag anomalies, generate tactical summaries, and reduce the time required for a human operator to review the information. This connects to Retrieval Augmented Generation, or RAG, which sounds like a cleaning supply for wiping blood off of a spreadsheet, but is actually the process where the AI is connected to a secure database of mission-specific information, then used to retrieve, summarize, and organize that data for commanders or analysts. In this model, the AI is not simply answering from its general training data. In theory, this limits hallucination by grounding the output to a controlled information environment, but in practice it still leaves major risks. Bad source data, incomplete context, automation bias, faulty summaries, hallucinated connections, and human operators over-trusting machine output under time pressure. And I think that's how we wound up bombing that girls' school in Iran. That is the first major failure. The system is probabilistic, but it is being placed near consequential military decisions. A large language model predicts likely outputs based on patterns in data. It does not possess moral judgment, legal responsibility, battlefield intuition, or contextual understanding in the human sense. And so it's being given that pass. They can say, oh, a person didn't bomb that school, this computer bombed them. It's math wearing a command lanyard. When the output is wrong in a consumer context, it produces misinformation. When the output is wrong in a military context, the failure can affect targeting, escalation, civilian risk, or operational judgment. The second failure is automation bias. The official compromise is usually described as human in the loop, meaning a person still makes the final decision, but the weakness in that model is obvious. A tired, overloaded human operator reviewing machine-generated recommendations during a compressed decision window may function less like an independent decision maker and more like a rubber stamp with a pulse. The presence of a human does not automatically solve the problem if the system has already shaped what the human sees, how the options are framed, and which data points are emphasized. At that point, human in the loop can become human as liability decoration, a little flesh ornament hanging off the machine so everyone can pretend accountability survived the software update. The third failure is accountability. When a human analyst makes a mistake, the decision chain can be investigated through testimony, records, orders, and documented reasoning. When a neural network contributes to a mistake, the causal path is harder to audit. The model may have weighed data in ways that are difficult to reconstruct. The source database may have contained errors. The summarization layer may have compressed away crucial uncertainty. The operator may not know which part of the output was grounded and which part was inferred. This creates a blurred chain of responsibility in precisely the kind of setting where responsibility should be clearest, which is convenient if the goal is to spread blame so thin it becomes government-flavored mist. The fourth failure is procurement by dependency. Once a model is integrated into classified systems, the vendor becomes harder to remove. The software is no longer merely a product, it becomes infrastructure. The government becomes dependent on the contractor's model, compute capacity, update schedule, security architecture, and data center footprint. That dependency allows a private company to become entangled with state power while still retaining commercial incentives. The classic American romance, public risk, private margin, and a contract vehicle parked across three congressional districts. That is where the grift appears most clearly. The same infrastructure that supports a commercial AI business can also be defended as military-critical infrastructure. Once that happens, the company can argue that normal regulatory burdens threaten national security. Environmental permitting, local oversight, public hearings, air quality rules, energy use scrutiny, and zoning challenges can all be reframed as obstacles to defense readiness. The trick is simple. Staple a flag to the server rack and suddenly the neighborhood asthma report is an act of sabotage. The Memphis case is the cleanest example of how this works in practice. XAI builds a massive data center, powers it with 27 gas turbines that local groups say are running without standard clean air permits, gets challenged by the NAACP and environmental advocates. And then the government's defense is essentially, we can't turn off the pollution machine because the chatbot is helping defend America. So now a private tech facility gets treated like a military base, local air quality becomes a negotiable side quest, and citizen oversight gets pushed behind a velvet rope marked national security. The consequence is that a private computing facility is treated as though its operational continuity outranks local environmental law and citizen oversight, and thus residents are being told that their lungs have been temporarily reclassified as a lower priority asset. The grift is not that the defense use is necessarily fake. The more serious problem is that a real or partially real defense can be converted into a blanket shield for private expansion. A model may have military utility. Maybe. A data center may support classified workloads. Maybe. A compute cluster may process sensitive information, but those facts do not automatically justify exempting the entire corporate infrastructure from environmental law, community consent, or public accountability. Some of this helps the Pentagon is not the same as fuck your town council. We're building Mordor. This creates a dual-use accountability gap. The same servers, power systems, model architecture, and corporate operations may support both public contracts and private profit. If the national security designation protects the full stack, then the public effectively subsidizes and shields a commercial monopoly while losing the normal tools used to regulate corporate behavior, losing everything. The public carries the environmental and democratic cost. The company retains the revenue and strategic advantage. It is a beautiful little scam in the way a tapeworm is beautiful. Efficient, adaptive, and living entirely off the host. And, it sounds like Peter Thiel. The strategic justification rests on geopolitical warfare, geopolitical fear of warfare. China, Russia, proxy wars, cyber conflict, gray zone operations, drone swarms, electronic warfare, supply chain disruption, and the need to process massive flows of data faster than our adversaries. Some of these threats are operationally real. Modern conflict does move through cyber attacks, maritime choke points, sanctions, surveillance, autonomous systems, and rapid escalation risks. But that reality also creates an incentive for permanent emergency logic, where the siren never turns off because the siren is now part of the business model. Permanent emergency logic is the political mechanism of the grift. If every technological race is existential, then every contractor becomes essential. If every AI system is critical infrastructure, then every data center becomes a battlefield asset. If every regulation slows readiness, then democratic oversight becomes a vulnerability. This converts national defense from a legitimate public function into a legal shield for private accumulation. It is the same old imperial coupon code. Enter national security at checkout to remove taxes, permits, oversights, and shame. And at this point, I think we've already got like 5 times more data centers than China, who has the other top amount in the world. I mean, like, all the other nations are moving away from this LLM fucking nonsense. The segment's central argument should be direct. The danger is not only AI and warfare. The danger is the merger of military urgency, private monopoly, environmental exemption, and algorithmic opacity. Each element reinforces the others. The military wants speed. The contractor wants scale. The government wants strategic dominance. The community wants clean air and legal rights. Under the national security frame, the community is the easiest party to overrule because communities do not have lobbyists with defense sector haircuts and PowerPoints titled Freedom Cloud. The final point is democratic accountability. If a government can classify a private AI system and its supporting infrastructure as too important for ordinary law, then the boundary between public defense and private impunity begins to collapse. Courts, legislatures, inspectors general, local governments, environmental agencies, and civil rights organizations become the remaining checks. Without those checks, national security becomes a portable exemption, capable of being attached to any sufficiently powerful technology company. Until the whole country is just a permissions error owned by contractors. And where the fuck is Congress? Anyway, so when you hear Psy-Op, you usually picture some shadow government bunker with cigarette smoke, reel-to-reel tape, and a man in a narrow tie saying, "Begin the operation." But the modern Psy-Op does not look like that. It's a meme. It's a press release. It's a wellness influencer, a patriotic slogan, a conspiracy theory wrapped around a real conspiracy. A fact check that tells the truth technically, but buries the context spiritually, like a lawyer embalming a corpse, sprinkle on some motherfucking corporate branding. Sometimes it looks like a chatbot politely explaining why a suspicious quote is unverified, which is responsible, technically correct, and also to the paranoid mind exactly what the machine would say if the machine were in on it. Paranoia can be exploited too. Skepticism can be healthy, but it can also be exploited. Every manipulator loves a person who thinks they cannot be manipulated. That person already bought the premium package. The real defense is not blind trust. It's not blind distrust either. It's taking your gut, your heart, your mind, the facts and opinions shared by those you love. 3 different news headlines, 3 different news stories from 3 different sources, and average it all out. The defense is disciplined attention. Ask what is documented, ask who benefits, ask what is being exaggerated, what is being made untouchable, what is the truth, what is absurd, fill in the gaps. Ask whether the loudest voice is the clarifying issue or poisoning the well. Because the Psy-Op does not always hide the truth by silence. Sometimes it hides the truth by making it embarrassing to say out loud. Aliens might be real, but they're not here. Most importantly, stay snide.